You're not going to believe this one. I do not have a 10-inch penis, brother. Terry Bollea's penis is not 10 inches. The character Hulk Hogan has a 10-inch penis, brother. That's Hulk Hogan. A quote from his courtroom appearance. Yeah, it's just like that.
From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we use the wind to power our windmills and the sun to power our sundials, and for everything else we use good old-fashioned fire. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Delighted you could join us this evening. Here is your golden age of Western civilization news roundup for the week ending the 2nd of May, 2025. Dateline Berlin, Monday, 28 April. The German states of Hesse and Bavaria announced this week they plan to begin what can only be called a political purge, whereby members of Alternative for Germany, the AfD, will be barred from joining the police and the civil service, and current members of the police and civil service, if they are found to be members of the number one most widely supported party in the country, which the AfD now is, well, they will be expelled from their jobs for harboring political views that are deemed unfashionable by the ruling globalist left establishment. The Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution, yes, that's a real thing, as Orwellian as it sounds, has designated the AfD as a right-wing extremist organization solely on the grounds that they don't sparkly heart the last 10 years of mass third world migration that nobody ever asked them if they wanted. And so, if you don't sparkly heart open borders, well, that makes you a right-wing extremist. So your party has to lose its funding, its members have to be thrown off their jobs, they should have their civil rights severely curtailed. So to put it simply, if you are a member of the most popular party in Germany that happens to be slightly to the right of Karl Marx, then you can only be half a citizen at best. You don't get your full civil rights. And isn't it fun watching Germany repeat all the same mistakes that made them the instigators of the two bloodiest wars in all of world history? Because what happens when you take a popular, mainstream, middle-of-the-road party and try to outlaw it and shunt it off into the margins? Well, that is exactly how you create extremism where no extremism existed previously. If Bavaria hadn't tried to ban the National Socialists, would their views have been as extreme as they wound up being? Maybe, but it's impossible to know. Would they ever have had any need of a rabble-rouser like Mrs. Schicklgruber's little boy? Maybe. Maybe not. What is it about the German character that makes them always invariably default to authoritarianism and political purges and mass censorship? And sure, instead of nibbling around the edges, let's ask the real, larger questions. Can the German people be trusted with democracy? And more importantly, is a unified German state a good thing for the larger world? For this reporter would submit that it is not. And I would further submit that the historical record will back me up on this. There was no nation-state called Germany until the end of the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. You had 3 kingdoms, you had a few principalities, and you had a collection of smaller duchies and margraviates and electorates and so on. Within 45 years of that unification, Germany instigated the most horrific war in world history. Within another 20 years after that, they had instigated a second world war that was orders of magnitude more horrific than the first one. For 45 years after that second war, the issue of the partition of Germany and its capital city very nearly instigated a third world war that would have been far worse than the first 2 wars combined. So here is the big question. Has the wider world gained any benefit from a unified and democratic Germany? Because from where I'm sitting, they have not. The unification of Germany has arguably caused more death and human suffering than any other political event in the history of the planet, and I think the rest of us are entitled to be pretty damn sick of dealing with it. Now they are trying to ban the opposition party for having views that nobody would have seen as being remotely objectionable or controversial as recently as 10 years ago. I, for one, have had just about enough of German domestic politics burning down the world, and they appear to be going back down that same old road all over again. And when all the killing is finished and all the cities lie in ruins, who's going to be expected to go in and fix everything? We will. Again. So I'm stating my view right here and now, backed up by more evidence than I should need, that the German people cannot be trusted with having a unified country, and they cannot be trusted with a democratic form of government. I am not here to dig into the reasons why they are so bad at self-governance. I'm just here to say that they have lost the opportunity to try. I am here to say break up Germany before they can burn down civilization for a third time. Dateline Madrid, Tuesday, 29 April. Western Europe underwent its worst mass power outage in at least the last 50 years this week, and I'll give you one guess what the cause was. Yeah, you got it. It happened because the Spaniards have converted vast sectors of the power grid away from reliable energy sources like oil and gas and toward wildly unreliable energy sources like windmills and solar panels and magic unicorn farts. I know, what a shocking development this is. Who could have guessed such a thing would ever happen? It was like a bolt from the blue, except that a bolt from the blue contains more electricity than unicorn farts. But since climate cultism is very much a state religion in many parts of the world, the Spanish government tried very hard at first to put some lipstick on the pig and blame the power outage on a, quote, freak weather incident, which caused many Spaniards to say, what freak weather incident are you talking about? Exactly, we didn't see any freak weather incident. All we saw was the freaking lights go out. And then the government, much to its own embarrassment, was forced to explain that, well, yeah, when we said freak weather incident, what we actually meant was it was unusually cloudy for a couple of days. And presumably the unicorns weren't farting hard enough. And it really says a lot for the potential of so-called renewable energy that your entire national power grid can be defeated by clouds. And I'm sure the people of Spain and Portugal, who were also affected by the mass outage, are really delighted to be living in a world where they pay about 5 times more for electricity than they did just a few years ago, and their reward is no fucking electricity. It really fills one with confidence in the capabilities of the people in charge, doesn't it? But the government wasn't quite done trying to cover its ass yet, because of course they weren't. When they tried to chalk the whole thing up to a freak weather event, and everybody responded correctly with laughter and derision and mockery, they then, ever so briefly, tried to claim that there must have been some sort of terrorist cyber attack that crippled the electrical grid. But then, in an all too rare case of journalists actually doing journalism, some reporters went and asked the firm that runs the national power grid if cyber terrorism was a plausible explanation for the outage, and the guy on the other end of the line said, nah, there wasn't any cyber attack that we're aware of. So only then, when they were completely out of lies to tell, did the government finally grudgingly concede, okay, fine, it was the clouds? Now, according to the Spanish press, upwards of 150,000 people had to be rescued from inoperative subway cars because what? You guys never heard of a backup power supply for your public transit? And hundreds of hospitals and old age homes were left scrambling trying to keep their patients alive when the power suddenly and completely failed? So, like, your hospitals don't even have backup generators? Because I always kind of thought that was a fairly crucial thing for a hospital to have, but let me guess. Defeating the sun monster is so important, and fossil fuels are such pure evil that we can't even have gas-powered backup generators for our damn hospitals. And they can't keep a couple of captive unicorns on hand to fart up some emergency power because, animal rights and all that. So yeah, very, very excellent look, Spain. It's great to see entire countries failing at things that civilization had figured out like 120 years ago, like how to build a reliable power grid. And I'm sure all those hospital patients who perished when their ventilators switched off would have been more than happy to sacrifice their lives on the altar of reducing the global mean temperature by 0.7 degrees 100 years from now. I know that I, for one, rest easier at night knowing Western civilization has all of its priorities firmly in order. Dateline Minneapolis, Wednesday, 30 April. Minnesota governor and failed vice presidential candidate Tampon Tim Walz gave an interview this week in which he revealed the primary reason he was tapped last year to be Kamala Harris's running mate. And here's the quote. I will let it stand as a monument to itself. Quote, I knew I was on the ticket. I would argue because we did a lot of amazing progressive things in Minnesota to improve people's lives, but I also was on the ticket, quite honestly, because I could code talk to white guys watching football, fixing their truck, doing that I could put them at ease. I was the permission structure to say, look, you can do this and vote for this. And look across those swing states, with the exception of Minnesota, we didn't get enough of those votes, end quote. So, there's a couple things that jump out at you immediately about this quote. The first one is, here we have a guy who was on the last presidential ticket less than half a year ago, who is matter-of-factly conceding that the Democrats are so far down the rabbit hole of identity politics, they think they need an interpreter to be able to talk to straight white men, which is still, whether they like it or not, and we know they don't, the biggest demographic group in the country. So they have spent the last 30 years or more demonizing straight white guys as the lowest form of life on the planet, who are nothing but a source of toxicity and misogyny and this ism and that phobia. And what? They look up one day having nominated Kamala Harris for the presidency, or I guess selected is the more correct term, and it only then occurs to them that, hey guys, I think it might be impossible to win a national election with only women and minorities. Who would have guessed? So you know what we need now? We need a white guy whisperer. We need a guy who can speak to these disgusting savages on their own level. And then they looked around and said, shit, we don't have many straight white guys to choose from, do we? It's kind of like when Joe Biden promised to choose a black woman running mate, and then they handed him a list of the prospective candidates, and he said, there's only 3, and 2 of them are Susan Rice and Barbara Lee. Jesus Christ, what have I got myself into here? And so, that's how we wound up with the gift of Vice President Kamala Harris. And she, in turn, because there's nothing new under the sun, because everything is a feedback loop of awfulness, she was handed a starkly similar conundrum where she needed a straight white guy on the ticket, and they gave her no better option than this ridiculous bumbling doofus whose main claim to fame as a governor was having led the fight to put feminine hygiene products in the boys' bathroom in Minnesota public schools. And he changed the Minnesota flag into a Somalia flag. That's just a fun bonus. It's the civil rights struggle of our time, And he enjoys taking groups of young boys into the woods to talk about their sexuality, which I'm sure there is a perfectly innocent explanation for. And the other thing that jumps out at you about this quote, it's the fact that he seems to be trying to imagine what it is that straight white guys spend their time doing. And he reduces it to watching football, fixing their truck. And he gives the whole game away right there, doesn't he? He gives away the fact that he is just cosplaying here, trying to play a role. You know why? Because no man in the real world actually uses terms like fixing my truck. No man in the real world has ever said, sorry, I can't go to the game today. I'm fixing my truck. If you're working on your truck, you either say, I'm working on my truck, or you say the specific thing you're working on. You say, I'm changing my plugs, I'm swapping out my alternator, I'm replacing my brake pads. You don't say, I'm fixing my truck. I'm fixing my truck sounds like something a woman would say when she is imagining how men talk to each other. It was Senator Mike Lee of Utah who had perhaps the most fitting retort to this story when he said on the platform previously known as Twitter, quote, I am a white guy. I've been a white guy for 53 years, and I have no idea what it means to code talk to white guys. Please enlighten me. End quote. Dateline Liverpool, Thursday, the 1st of May. In news from the British Premier League, Liverpool striker Cody Gakpo scored a goal to help his team to a 5-1 home victory over Tottenham Hotspur last Sunday at Anfield, and he received an official reprimand from the Football Association for the shockingly unacceptable display that he engaged in immediately after scoring the goal. And what dastardly act in question was he guilty of? Well, he removed his jersey to reveal a t-shirt that said, I belong to Jesus. And yeah, there's a few things we need to get out of the way right here at the top. First, would there have been any official reprimand if it was a shirt that said Allahu Akbar? I think we all know the answer to that one. Second, I think one has to stand back and marvel at the fact that a British citizen can be disciplined by the British Football Association for an expression of Christian faith undertaken in a country where Christianity is still, ostensibly at least, the official state religion. Third, I think there was an easy way that he could have escaped from any censure or punishment by simply saying, no, the shirt doesn't refer to Jesus Christ. It refers to my gay lover whose name is Jesus. If he had gone that route, not only would there have been no punishment, but he probably would have been named the Grand Marshal of this year's Liverpool Pride Parade. This weekend's incident represents just the latest salvo in the Football Association's ongoing effort to stamp out public expressions of Christianity in a country where they still sing God Save the King before the start of every match, which, I don't know, seems like a bit of mixed messaging, don't you think? Now, earlier this year, Crystal Palace captain Mark Gooey was twice reprimanded by the FA for having written in consecutive weeks, I love Jesus and Jesus loves you on the rainbow armband that the league required him to wear in celebration of gay something or other. And let's take a quick look at the FA bylaw that the players are accused of having violated. Quote, equipment must not have any political, religious, or personal slogans, statements, or images. Players must not reveal undergarments that show political, religious, personal slogans, statements, or images, or advertising other than the manufacturer's logo. End quote. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, wait, isn't a rainbow armband, by definition, a political statement? Well, yes. Yes, it is. But that's not important now. The important thing to remember is that in the free and democratic United Kingdom, your employer can and will compel you to engage in public celebrations of non-normative sexuality, whether or not you approve of such things. But if you try to engage in any display of your Christian faith, and especially in such a way that sullies the dignity of the holy and sacred rainbow armband, well, you are going to be in a hell of a lot of trouble, pal. So you tell me, as a practical matter, which thing has all the features of a state religion, and which thing doesn't? I expect they'll have to change the lyrics to the national anthem pretty soon at this rate. God save our rainbow king, we all love buggering and all gay things. I probably shouldn't give the bastards any ideas, should I? Dateline New York City, Friday the 2nd of May. If this headline doesn't make you want to visit the Big Apple immediately, you must have some major malfunction. Quote, illegal alien accused of attempting to rape corpse on subway. Felix Rojas, a 44-year-old Mexican, has been arrested on charges that, well, I think the headline sums it up pretty well without having to go into any further graphic detail. And how have the fake news media reported on the story? Well, I think you know how. It's quite the recurring theme for him at this point. They are refusing to mention that the accused homosexual cadaver rapist is in the country unlawfully, opting instead to refer to him as a, quote, Brooklyn man, which I'm sure the residents of Brooklyn are just delighted about. Now, what was the first thing that jumped out at me when I saw this headline and read this story? It was not the fact that a guy stands accused of attempting to violate a dead man on a subway train, though don't get me wrong, that was a close second. The very first thing I thought was, so New York City subway cars just have random corpses in them? Like nobody goes through once or twice a day to clean the corpses out? That's the current state of things in NYC? Because I don't know about you, but that makes me want to book my vacation right away. Honey, kids, we are going to New York City for some cultural edification. And if we're riding the subway and you happen to see a Mexican man making sweet, sweet love to the moldering cadaver of a homeless drunk who expired several days ago, don't make a big deal of it. Just try to avert your eyes and ignore the smell. We are not from here, so this must be just the way they do things. I mean, why let a perfectly good dead body go to waste when it is still perfectly useful to any Mexican necrophiliac illegal aliens who happen to be visiting? That's just what a tolerant, pluralistic society looks like, kids. So aren't you glad we made this trip? We have only been mugged 3 times so far, and even that experience has expanded our cultural horizons. Because now we all know how to say, hand over your money and jewelry or I will fucking gut you like a fish in Senegalese, Swahili, and Hindustani. And who knows, maybe they'll start putting that on the tourism billboards next year. Come to New York City and get mugged in 6 exotic languages while you watch a decomposing body get sodomized by a dude from Guadalajara. If that's not a dream vacation, I don't know what the hell is. And if Jill Biden was here right now, she would probably say, hey, don't knock it till you try it, buddy. Sex with corpses can be very gratifying. And I feel like I should probably stop talking now. So here is where I toss it over to my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, a man who only copulates with creatures that currently have a heartbeat, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Tactical nuke incoming!
So let me get this straight. You mean to tell me that World War III might be set off by the same 2 perpetrators of the 2 previous incarnations of this nightmare?
Can you imagine? Whoever would have thought?
Who'd have thunk it, dude? I could have picked that one out of a lineup. But listen, welcome to the Blast Radius, everybody. This is the night, the one night we're going to be doing a lot of really kind of fast-paced things, and we'll get into the chat here in just a little bit. But we're changing things here. I've got a couple of weird ideas I'm going to toss at Cap after we get done here. And then next week might be a little different. We'll see how it flies. But until then, we're going to do it this way and then some of that way. And we're going to go straight into it. I've got this muted so that we can discuss the absolute madness of turning our safety over to robots in the wild. And then the fact that people are just outright abusing them. What do you expect to have happen when every robot out there freaks up for no apparent reason? Watch this one. Oh my God. Oh my God. Looks like some of those Stickman games.
Right? Yep, I was waiting for the first Terminator reference.
And you know it's got to happen. You know, Kai bought a robot. And you know what the first thing they did with it? Abuse
Sex?
it. No, they abused it. They just stood around and kicked it till it fell down. And then it went and learned karate. I mean, none of this is any good. I don't like any of this at all. They've got driverless big rigs on the Texas highway now, starting this week. Oh no. Yep. Well, if it was going to happen, it should happen in Texas, I believe.
Well, and the first thing I thought of when I saw that news was, remember the movie Logan, which they made in 2017, I believe, and the movie was set in 2029, and they had driverless robot big rigs, and so maybe they called that one exactly right. And then if so, more power to them. Good job.
Right. I'm going to skip over all this crap. It's immaterial.
And on a related note, President Trump just signed an executive order this week saying that foreign truck drivers have to be proficient in English to drive in this country. So maybe it's going to be a non-issue anyway, because do you care if the computer driving your truck, he probably speaks every language in the world, so we're all good, right?
I'm not sure driving is one of the things computers should be given control of.
Yeah, I'm pretty dubious about it too, because as we know, every possible bad eventuality that can happen will happen. If the robots were left to their own devices, it would probably be fine. But make them commingle with human drivers, knowing what we know about human drivers, there's got to be bad things that are in the offing. Call me a pessimist, but that's just the way I'm looking at it.
I found our first candidate for colonizing a new world. Although I want you to take a real good look at the gentleman standing in front of us and then what it is he has to say.
Hi, I'm a dad, and this is my beautiful daughter. This is my beautiful daughter, and this is my beautiful daughter. Yeah, and this is my beautiful daughter. 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 And this is also my beautiful daughter.
Isn't this a scene from Game of Thrones?
No, but somebody needs to talk to this chick about exactly how children are made.
Well, I'm reminded of Walder Frey from Game of Thrones, where he's got 20 daughters he can marry off at any time.
Yeah, it's because he kills his son. He doesn't do sons.
Beautiful.
At a certain point, like he had a bunch of daughters and he only had like 3 sons. I remember right, something like that. And the first one was born with like deformed hands or something and had an accident in the night. The second one was born weakly with like hemophilia and had an accident in the night. And the third one just disappeared one afternoon. Was born with a club foot and just vanished one day while he was walking around the parapet.
God, hemophilia. Is there a distant relation to Queen Victoria we don't know about?
I think that was all part of that whole thing, was a Habsburg reference in there, Because
I mean, there is still hemophilia floating around in European royalty right up to the present day because of her.
Yeah, right. But my point is, I'm going to show this video again, and we're going to stop on each one and discuss exactly how it is that this woman and this guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the side. Hi, I'm a dad, and this is my.
Hold on, boy, he just breezed right through that. Okay, number one, that could possibly be their daughter. I don't have any argument against it. Probably their daughter.
That one I'm a little dubious about.
I'm not sure whose daughter that is. And I don't think he knows either.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that's not from the tree. If you can, that's the fruit from another. Maybe, but I'm thinking there might be
that's a stick in a different wood pile, so to speak.
I was just thinking about that reference, trying to figure out how to do it without getting really, really bad.
There you go. I solved it for you.
Yeah, there's some of these that are not. I'm sorry, I just don't buy. I just don't buy it.
I'm not buying that one.
I mean, I blame this one. This is the one I blame. She's the one that understands what every single one of these children. She can explain it, and she's not fessing up. Somebody's not telling the truth somewhere, somehow. And believe me, I adopt children. I don't believe children chose to be here. I don't believe they had any choice in the whole situation. And so I firmly take care of any children that stumble across my path because they're children.
Well, Lady Curmudgeon and I were having kind of a conversation sort of tangential to that recently when we were talking about just how much the ability to establish paternity by DNA testing has changed things, because imagine all the women who went to their grave thinking their secrets were intact only to have them revealed decades or centuries later by the advent of DNA testing. Because it used to be that really the woman was the only one who knew questions of paternity, but that's not the case anymore. So, a lot of women who died thinking their secrets were intact were very much mistaken.
That is true. That is true. How? Buddy Lorenzo, don't bite me. Thank you. So we've got an interview with Trump from the White House, right? Do you want to give the whole shumammy on it?
What does fake news look like? It looks like this interview. I don't know how we wound up with this. I forget his first name, but his last name is Moran. He's from ABC News. I don't know why Stephanopoulos didn't want to do it, except maybe he knew he would get made to look like a fool and a buffoon, because he is a fool and a buffoon. But yeah, apparently Trump said that he was willing to give ABC News an interview in the Oval Office on the 100th day, and they gave him a selection of a bunch of their backbench news anchors to choose from. I think this guy is like the Saturday anchor or the Sunday anchor for ABC World News Tonight, but just watch how terribly this man acquits himself in this interview, because there could be no clearer example of the difference between journalists doing journalism and a man interviewing the president who is there to represent the opposition party. If this man was an official representative of the Democrat National Committee, this interview would not sound any different. And just behold the intellectual pretzel shapes that this moron ties himself into, just trying to make Trump wrong about everything. That's all the intro I need.
Excellent. I want to follow that up. All right, for all of you people who are out there trying to pretend that you know what Trump is thinking, if you turn his Twitter loose and give him 15 minutes, he'd just tell you. You don't even have to wonder. He would straight up tweet the very thoughts within his own head. But, he gets blocked everywhere. So, we don't get to know these things. So, here we are. Interview start.
After you were reelected, right? Going through your mind. Triumphant when you walk back?
Yeah. There's a
Hold the fucking phone. What's going on here?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. See, he was standing next to the desk. I'm like, why are you standing over the president, bro? Like, what the hell's going on here? What? But it is a sit down.
He started off, and it was actually quite hilarious, by pointing to all the pictures on the wall and asking Trump why those pictures of those men. He asked, why do you have a picture of President James Monroe on the wall? And do you need a freaking explanation for why you have goddamn James Monroe on the wall? Are you kidding me? Like, what are you going for here, dude? A president has pictures of other presidents on the wall. You're trying to make that controversial? You buffoon. You stark, raving buffoon.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Trump on his 100th day in office from the...
I didn't sign up for this. So undeniable fact that illegal crossings at the southern border have plummeted a staggering
too far, too fast, too reckless.
And the Terry Moran.
Earlier today, I sat down with President Trump.
Okay, let's get to the sitting down with part.
Quite like it. And they give you a choice of about 7 different desks, but this is the one I chose. Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, he's going to do the paintings right now.
But I found it to be the most beautiful.
It is amazing.
This is an amazing space, and amazing, maybe architecturally wonderful, but amazing for what it represents. It represents the U.S., and if properly used, a lot of good things can happen.
I see Ronald Reagan over there.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan.
Right to your left.
Being in the Oval Office is very important. See Ronald Reagan here, and put him a little bit larger. It sort of seemed to fit very nicely. You have Democrats a little bit. You have
Franklin Roosevelt.
Franklin Roosevelt. So you look at that picture and people say, well, what's he doing up there? But look, he was a serious president, whether we like it or not. He was a 4-termer. And,
3 terms plus 30 days if we're being technical.
Hold on, bro. Was that put there specifically to troll people wondering whether he's going to go for a 4th term?
I expect it might have been, because I'm like, it's so easy for him to troll people. How could you not do it?
Dude, I'd have
it's
done
like a big bowl of candy sitting in front of you, and nobody's watching. And how can you not eat some when they make it so easy?
Bro, poking it right in their eye. That's so brilliant. I love it.
Yes.
Look over here, that's Monroe, the Monroe Doctrine.
Why is he up there?
I think the Monroe Doctrine was pretty
It's
important.
James Monroe, for Christ's sake.
Here you have the original of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, and of course you have the Declaration of Independence.
What does it mean to you?
Well, it means exactly what it says. It's a declaration. It's a declaration of unity and love and respect, and it means a lot, and it's something very special.
Wait a second. Have you ever read the Declaration of Independence, sir? There is some.
I expect he probably hasn't. But
it's get off
Lady Curmudgeon will back me up on this. I used to read out the entire Declaration of Independence to the kids every July 4th. So I bet they all know vast stretches of it by heart. And yes, you can go ahead and call me a good father right now.
You are a good father. I can tell by the way you read the Declaration of Independence. Did you happen to follow it up with the preamble to the Constitution?
Oh, they've heard that plenty of times too.
Okay, good.
Special to our country.
Lincoln's portrait up there. I'm not familiar with that one, but I think when I'm looking at that famous line in the second inaugural with malice toward gun, with
Right,
charity toward
right.
all. Is that-
Well, he was a great president. He went through a lot.
And the Oval Office is always changing between presidents. And
It
that
changes,
says
yeah,
something.
it does.
What does this say about how you feel about the country and the office?
Well, I think it says I love the country. I mean, I'm putting pictures of presidents up that have never been up, pictures that weren't largely used. And in many cases, great men, in this case men, but great men of great achievement.
And your every detail, it seems.
Yeah.
This is your office.
I'm a very detailed person. I'm a very
This is
clean
your
person.
office. There's a profound statement.
Why is it that Trump doesn't look like he belongs in that space? He kind of looks like he's in there trying not to touch too much stuff because he'll move it out of where it's supposed to be. Or is that?
And I
just
don't
me?
know. I don't know why he is still giving interviews to sleaze bags like this. I don't. He still after everything wants so badly for the mainstream news media to like him, and I would say it's one of his biggest foibles, frankly.
Yeah, that's that ego working. Yeah. Look at
because they used to like him so much. They loved him. Everybody loved him. They fawned over him constantly until he became a Republican politician, and then he became Hitler and Satan and the devil.
And the space be treated properly. I've added a lot to
True.
the space in terms of beautification, in terms of modernization. That's
A gallery of presidents.
It really is. It really is. So, and it's an honor to have you people with us.
Mr. President, thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much.
Here in the Oval Office. It's special. 100 days into your second term. So what's the one thing, just one thing, that you think is the most significant thing you've done so far in these 100 days?
Well, I think maybe the border is the most significant because our country was really going bad. They were allowing people to come in from prisons, as you know, and you've heard me say it, but you've heard a lot of people say it. Prisons, mental institutions, gang members, murderers. We had many murders, 11,888, they think. Some murdered more than one person. So you had murderers coming in, you had everybody coming in, and not just South America, from all over the world. They were emptying their prisons into our country. And now it's totally closed down. And you've seen just yesterday, they announced 99.9%. Nobody thought that could happen. And it happened quickly, very quickly. And I think that's very significant. But we're doing other things that are very significant. The results will take a little bit longer because it's one of those, it's complicated. It's many years of trading abuse. We've been abused by other countries for years and years.
Is there anybody around that disagrees with that statement? I don't.
I don't either. I don't understand the argument for why we are obliged to have unequal trade relations with other countries. The only thing President Trump is asking for is reciprocity in the tariffs that we charge other people and they charge us. And if we know anything about Donald Trump, it's that he is an avid deal maker and he likes deals that are fair where everybody makes money. And that's
right.
The only thing he's asking for here with his trade policy.
Yeah. But I kind of got the impression from the past 30 years of government activity that the whole plan is to consecrate America and export all of our manufacturing, import all of our goods, and just be a consumer base for the rest of the world, thereby
Yes.
Protecting our resources inside the U.S. from the same type of thing that's going on in places like India and Africa, and the sweatshop type mentality and just that whole thing. But I'm not sure how valuable of an approach that is if it's going to like ruin everything.
Well, it's not valuable, and we've talked about many times before how short-sighted it all really was, because about 35 years ago, it was simply decided that we were going to have free trade globalism forever, that it didn't matter if we had a manufacturing base. We could offshore all those jobs because our economy was just going to be an information economy, and everybody would go to college and get their little 4-year degree and have a computer job in a little cubicle farm, and everything would be great, and Americans wouldn't have to work for a living anymore. Nobody ever asked the Americans if they were cool with this. It was just decided that's the way it was going to be, and concomitant with that, we were going to economically entangle ourselves with communist China, and the point of economically entangling ourselves was that, well, if we just entangle our economy with theirs, then somehow magically they will become a Madisonian liberal democracy. It'll be great, just watch. Obviously, none of that has happened. It has produced the opposite of all the desired effects, and there are still many people who want to keep doing that forever.
All right, let's make a run through chat right quick. We got Scotty Waddles. Or do we want to do all the versions? We got straight up Scotty Waddles, Scotty Waddles, Scotty's Dragon, Scotty's Monster, Scotty Waddles Monster. Welcome in, bro. Appreciate your efforts. Casey May has joined the chat. That's cool. We got Grim Ben in.
Scotty is a Hydra. He's got many heads.
Many heads. Aussie Manda, welcome in, girl. Good to see you. Donnie Mullis, what up? What up? I just highlighted everything. Allie Bell, welcome in. Good to see you. Queen Bird is the one. She's
Queen Bird.
Bingo. Next one that popped in was, I think, mandatory. Carried up the Frequency Forge. Good to see you, brother. Appreciate you coming through. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for being here.
Tim Walls is the white guy whisperer, and he's new. Desert Goat. He's joined the chat. It's good to see you, buddy. Appreciate you coming through.
Yes, you can headbutt the like button. Just don't concuss yourself.
We got Scott Norton in the chat, and apparently he licked it too many times. Apparently they're going to make him lick it one more time so that the light can stick. We got peace.
It's like getting to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop.
3. I think everybody loved that commercial. What is up, Carrie? Welcome in, brother. By the way, his first name is the Volstead Act written backwards. That's why it's so hard to. Greg S., welcome in, brother. Appreciate you coming through.
Wow, I never would have guessed that. It sounds so authentically Russian.
It does.
It really does.
We got Izzy Pop.
Like, you just blew up my whole world when you told me that.
The Powdered Dusty has joined the chat, and I have a donation link over in my chat over there, and if you'd like me to kidnap the Powdered Dusty, that's the quickest way to make it happen.
Ransom is handsome.
Yep. We got M's Mad World joining the chat. It's good to see you, chick. Welcome in.
Hey, M.
All right. So, like I said, we all pretty much agree that the world has been taking advantage of the U.S. in their financial role as consumers. And it's just been an increasing shit-stained broom handle. And I'd like to know whose name's on the handle. Who's holding it? That's the question.
Well, yes, and it's had the added effect of that we have really badly left our strategic asses hanging out, especially to the extent that we rely on China for important materials that we need to make weapons and communications equipment, which we thankfully have just started to redress with. We just signed a deal with Ukraine, which we probably should mention at some point, and we've just signed another few deals with a couple of African countries that are in the same vein, and thank God for that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's what it comes down to is some type of like level playing field business, rather
Yes.
than everyone on Earth having an upper hand on us when it comes to manufacturing and supply.
Yeah, there is no principle of morality that says we are obliged to let other people rip us off.
At us, they thought we were stupid people, and we're fixing it. And I think that's going to be very, very important. But I
We have a lot of ground to cover.
yeah, I would really say that the border is so important. You know, just
And
can't
we'll get there.
let that
Immigration is
happen. Yeah.
huge, and we're going to get there. But I want to start with the economy, the number one issue for so many people, just about everybody. It's one of the main reasons that you're back in this office. And now we have this trade war with China that Moody's and other analysts say is going to cost American families thousands of more dollars per year. And there is a lot of concern out there. People are worried, even some people who voted for you saying, I didn't sign up for this. So
Straw
how do you answer
man.
those concerns?
Did sign up for it, actually, and this is
Yeah, I'd like to meet these fictitious voters that didn't vote.
Oh
for
yeah,
this.
this guy has no shortage of straw men and sock puppets who he is willing to jam words into the mouths of. It's really his main tech that he takes throughout this interview, and he really beclowns himself and makes a complete buffoon out of himself.
Right?
this is what I campaigned on. I said that we've been abused by other countries at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We were losing $3 to $5 billion a day on trade. We were losing $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion a year. Not sustainable. They were taking advantage of us like they've never. I could have left it that way, and at some point there would have been an implosion like nobody's ever seen. But I said, no, we have to fix it. I've wanted to do this for many years. You know, I had the best economy during my first term. We had a tremendous economy, tremendous success, and we.
I'm sorry. Look at this, dude. Where is that?
$1.5 trillion to $2 trillion a year. Not sustainable. They were taking advantage of us like they've never. I could have left it that way, and at some point there would have been an implosion like nobody's ever seen. But I said, no, we have to fix it. I've wanted to do this for many years. You know, I had the best economy.
Do you know what adjective comes to mind when I look at that man's face?
Dim.
Smarmy.
Smarmy. We've had this conversation before.
Yeah, that is the personification of smarmy right there.
Gotcha.
Stick it in the dictionary.
Right there. Yes, sir. Look at him. There's so much hate just written on this guy's face and his eyeballs. If looks could kill, Trump would be in a million pieces, bro.
Oh, I know. He is so desperate to destroy this man. That's the only thing he wants out of life right now.
What is good in life?
Economy during my first term. We had a tremendous economy, tremendous success, and we did tremendous numbers of tariffs on. We took in a lot of money from tariffs, China in particular.
Hey, next time we cover a Trump thing, I want to put it. Remind me to put an orange filter on the fucking screen. I want to make him even oranger.
Well, yeah, the fake news networks do that all the time. I noticed that just a few times today as I was doing background for the show. ABC News is one of the worst offenders, but CBS does it, NBC does it, the cable channel. Like when they want to make him look sinister, they dial up the contrast and make him look way more orange.
I love it. M's Mad World gets a participation trophy. She delivered this absolute killer. Smarmalade.
Oh, M's Mad World shoots and scores.
You can go ahead and get your trophy. They'll be down front waiting.
You take your sweet time circling the bases.
Billions of dollars in tariffs. We had no inflation, as you know. We had an incredible economy. We're given credit for a great economy. But I said, we have to fix this. Otherwise, it's just not self-sustaining.
Well, one of the things you ran on was you said you'd bring prices down on day one,
Yeah,
and that
and
it
I
would
have.
happen fast, and that it would happen fast.
I
And
have.
most economists tell you that tariffs will raise prices. So don't your tariff.
So you've talked to most economists, have you?
I'll skip that bullshit. No, dude, that's low hanging fruit, and I'd rather you retire.
And there he goes again with the straw man game. Oh, many economists have said. You know, many other economists have said the opposite thing, but I don't see you mentioning that for some reason. That's strange. You only want to talk about the so-called many economists who say it's a bad thing.
Right.
Mr. Objective Impartial Journalist, you.
Oh, welcome in, Chairman of the Board. Good to see you, bro. Appreciate you coming through. Yeah, no, it's all one-sided. He's only going to ask questions that are intended to be answered in a negative light. So try to get the clip that they're after.
Yes,
you know
and when Trump gives an answer that makes himself look good, then homeboy very quickly tries to pivot to a new subject. That happens about half a dozen times during this thing.
Facts.
Cut against that promise you made to bring prices down.
No, because I had massive tariffs on China, if you remember, in my first term, and we had essentially no inflation, like around 1% inflation, which is like a perfect number. And then when Biden took over, it went through the roof. It went to probably the worst inflation we've ever had. I mean, we had an inflation nightmare. Now, if you look at what's happening now, we're only there for 100 days, as you say. And in 100 days, we took over. We had bad inflation for 4 years, for 2 years of, especially 2 years of his administration. I would say record-setting, like we've never seen. They say 48 years, the worst in 48 years. I say it was much worse than that. Yeah. Right. So now, if you look at what's happened, energy is down. Gasoline hit $1.98 in a few states during the last couple of days. It was $3.50 and $4 and $4.50. But gasoline is way down. When I took over, you remember the big thing with eggs. They hit me the first week. Eggs, like it was my fault. I said, I didn't cause this problem. This problem was caused by Biden. What's the problem with eggs? And they said,
they killed all the chickens.
Yes, Biden ordered a chicken genocide on his way out the door so that Trump would have an immediate problem with egg prices. That is what happened.
Right.
Doubled. Well, eggs are down 87% since I got involved.
A lot of that is
and
bird
by the way,
flu,
and there were
right?
plenty of eggs for Easter, which we just went through. There were plenty of eggs for Easter. They were saying you won't have enough eggs for Easter. My secretary did a fantastic job on eggs. Groceries are down. Everything's down.
Okay.
Interest rates are the same. Interest rates should be down, but we have a Federal Reserve that wants to be stubborn. They want to be
All right,
cute.
we'll get to that. You said something a couple weeks ago that struck me. You said concerning the tariffs, which economists say are going to raise prices. You said,
Keep saying it.
Hang
Economists say.
easy. You said that to the American people. Is that what Americans should
Well, I've
expect?
said
Some
that.
hard times?
I've said that
because of
during
these
my
tariffs?
campaign. Look, we won a campaign by a lot. We won all 7 swing states. We won the popular vote by a lot. You know, we had a tremendous campaign. I said all of these things during my campaign. I said, you're going to have a transition period. We've been ripped off by every country all over the world. They're laughing at us. They thought we were stupid people, and we were. And I said, that's not going to happen. We're not
But
gonna
hard
let that
times?
happen.
Hard times are ahead?
I don't think so. I
Hang
think
tough.
great times are ahead. Look, since I came in, gasoline is down, groceries are down, egg prices are down, many things are down, just about everything. You know, you don't have the drop in fuel and energy and oil like we did. I took it from maybe $3.20, maybe more than that, down into a much lower number. When you have that kind of a drop, you're not going to have inflation.
Not now, but it's the tariffs, right? We still have 145% tariffs on
why
China.
is it-
Your Treasury Secretary said we basically have an embargo on China.
I'm going to summarize this entire meeting, and I haven't seen it all yet, but this is what I'm getting. Tariffs bad. Orange man bad. Tariffs bad.
Yes.
Tariffs bad. Tell me your tariffs are bad, that they're bad.
Aren't prices going to go up? Isn't this going to be terrible?
Listen.
Every question is framed like that.
Right. Yeah. I'm not.
Look, you're trying to say something's going to happen. Terry.
No. Okay, well,
Nothing's going to happen.
You know business. I
Terry,
want to ask you.
Terry, I do know business.
Yes,
and
so 145% tariffs on China, and that is
That's good.
basically
That's
an
good.
embargo.
They deserve it.
It'll raise prices on
They
everything
deserve
from
it.
electronics to clothing to building houses.
You don't know that. You don't know whether or not China's going
That's
to eat
mathematics.
it. China probably will eat those tariffs, but at 145, they basically can't do much business with the United States. And they were making from us $1 trillion a year. They were ripping us off like nobody's ever ripped us off. And by the way, we have other countries that were just as bad. If you look at the European Union, it was terrible what they've done to us. Every country, almost every country in the world was ripping us off. They're not doing that
I
anymore.
want you to think about the boom that this country has had in small businesses, mom and pop, Etsy stores, small businesses that
Really?
became
They
big.
haven't.
Win.
Yeah, because
What,
because Mr. ABC News cares so much about mom and pop small business owners.
But I'm not even going to jump on that bandwagon. I'm going to go after the actual reference he's making. What boom? The boom occurred right after the tariffs went into effect because people looked around and went, wait a second, we can make a mint. We got to be quick.
Yep. Yep, and the even the supposed calamitous damage that was being done to the markets, they've already recovered from. The markets are right back to where they were on January 20th. So they dropped that line of attack pretty quickly, you'll notice.
Yeah.
And had a boom because of inflation.
Well,
the boom
what they've done
was inflationary boom. The people were wiped out with inflation. I mean, you read the news, you do the business
now
stuff, I
they
assume.
face, now a lot of them built those businesses on the trading model.
Yeah, and they're gonna
before
make
you.
more money
They
now.
sourced their products overseas, and now they're looking at an extinction
I've been
event.
here.
They're disaster for.
I've been here for 3 months. I've taken a trade deficit down to
Y'all hear what he just said?
Yeah,
The model that he's talking about is what's referred to as drop selling or reselling, where people buy products and then are part of the Amazon delivery network to allow products to show up quicker by just having them in stock in the US, right? That's not a legitimate business model. That's technically illegal, as I understand.
And yeah, everybody enjoys having the option of buying dirt cheap garbage crap products from China and having Amazon deliver it the next day. But weighed against the damage that 35 years of that arrangement has done, not just to our manufacturing base, but to our economy more broadly, I think the vast majority of people in the country would be happy to trade their cheap Chinese plastic crap for a more sustainable economic arrangement that is not based on letting other people rip us off and being economically entangled with fucking communists.
I kind of have the opinion that communism can only really exist as long as there is at least one free trade market in existence, so that the communists can shore up their framework with the free trade aspect of the world. Because if it was just communism, you would just have the effects of communism.
If we hadn't been letting them steal everything we have been letting them steal for the last several decades, Chinese communism would not be a thing anymore. We have allowed them to prop up their communist regime by stealing from us.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I'd accidentally punched that. My bad.
to a number that's very, very starting to get really good. I just got here. We had a country that it was not sustainable. What Biden did to this country, between the open borders where criminals poured into our country, between every country in the world ripping us off on trade, it was not sustainable.
So your message to those small businesses who are saying, we can't live a month, 2 months with these tariffs. Apple got a big deal. Is there something for them?
No, not only Apple. We've got $7 to $8 trillion being invested in our country in 2 months. Biden didn't have that over a year. I mean, if you look at Biden, nobody was really investing in this country. Everybody was ripping off our country. Apple's putting up $500 billion, but that's only one of many companies. Companies are flooding into our country right now.
So your answer to the concern about the tariffs is everything's going to be hunky-dory.
Everything's going to be just fine. But it wouldn't have been if I didn't do this. I had a choice. Nice, easy time.
That's Mr. Professional Journalist. Putting words in the president's mouth. Words like hunky-dory. So you're saying. If he's not sock puppeting and straw manning some fictional economist, then he's straw manning and sock puppeting the president right to its face. What glory this journalist is crowning himself in right now.
Yeah, I'm going to hear it again.
To our country right now.
So your answer to the concern about the tariffs is everything's going to be hunky-dory.
Everything's going to be just fine. It wouldn't have been if I didn't do this. I had a choice. I could leave it, have a nice, easy time, but I think ultimately you would have had an implosion. Our country had inflation that was worse than they've ever had it before. You don't mention that. Why don't you mention that?
One aspect of the American system of monetary gains, it allows us to offset our inflation directly onto the petrodollar that's outside of the U.S., which is something a lot of people don't bother to consider in whenever they're calculating, based inflation. It's much higher than it actually appears because, like I said, other countries have to buy our money. The government gets to sell it at a non-inflated rate, which allows the government to basically profit on the inflation that happens.
Yes, and piggybacking on top of that, we also have the world's reserve currency. which is a tremendous advantage that we can exploit in all manner of ways, and we haven't been exploiting it properly. Trump wants to exploit it properly. Why would anybody have a problem with that?
Right. Right.
We had the worst inflation probably in the history of our country. People say 48 years, probably in the history of our country, we had the worst inflation. And people were dying over the inflation. You know that. Now the grocery prices are coming down, the energy prices are coming down, gasoline's coming down. It's all heading in the right direction.
Okay, let's move on to immigration.
Coming up.
Let's move on.
We're moving on to immigration.
Yeah, you're sounding too good, so we're going to move on to a different topic.
Exactly.
How many minutes are we into this interview?
Well, we don't know now. Because
I'm trying to think of any time in his entire presidency when Joe Biden did a 20-minute interview, and I don't think he ever did.
Right. Okay.
Because he couldn't, obviously. I mean, and even the 10, 12, 13-minute interviews he did had to be really heavily edited by fellow traveler fake news performance artists, just trying to make him look as good as possible. And, you know, there's a limit to how much lipstick you can put on that pig.
Right.
That illegal crossings at the southern border have plummeted, a staggering decline. But there are questions about your methods. And so I want to ask
About my message?
methods, about your methods, how you're
They
accomplishing
seem to
this.
work.
Get to hear.
Well, are we talking about people that are citizens of our country or not?
No, you're not deporting citizens at this point.
Well, let me ask you, did they get hearings when Biden allowed 21 million, because I think the number is 20 million people to flow into our country? You had 21 million people that came into our country through a stupid open border, and they were prisoners, and they were people that you don't want in many cases in our country, right? They came from all over the world. They came from the Congo. They came from South. They came from all over the world. We're talking about some of the roughest countries in the world. They had here, including terrorists, by the way. Now,
But the
did
law-
we give them a hearing when they came in?
Well, the law requires that every single person who is going to be deported gets a hearing first.
Well,
you acknowledge that?
I'll have to ask the lawyers about it.
I agree 100%. Smarmalade has now made it into the current cultural lexicon of the channels. Both channels shall now use Smarmalade.
Absolutely.
as it's-
Smarmalade is my new favorite word. I promise to use it in the next episode.
I will use it every chance I get from now until the end of time.
Absolutely right.
And say is this: if you're going to have 21 million people, and we have to get a lot of them out because they're criminals, we're going to have to act fast. We can't. Do you think we can give 21 million trials? Let's say each trial takes 2 weeks. Is that what you want us to
The
do?
law
Give
is the
21
law,
million?
sir. The law is the law,
No,
and
no,
you're
the law
sworn
doesn't
to
say anything
uphold.
about trials.
No, not trials, hearings. I said
These
hearings.
people came in, they're not citizens. They came in illegally. They came into our country
Right.
illegally.
And
We
there's-
have to get them out.
There's a legal process for
I
that.
can't, sure, and we follow the legal process. I can't have
I
it.
love that. I love that. This is coming down to the past 30 years of various legalese being woven into the language of the concepts of things like birthright citizenship and that type of stuff, which, having done a little research into it, you can't find any of the language they use to try to prove birthright citizenship anywhere in the actual laws themselves, right? These people, according to the Constitution, don't necessarily get due process unless we decide to give it. And that is only in the event that we have the resources to do so.
Yes,
Sorry.
this is a very simple, uncomplicated thing, and this Smarmalade fake news performance artist is giving the whole game away right now. Because here is the fact of the matter: any person who is unlawfully present in the country is subject to immediate removal. Period. End of story. To the extent that we give them something that resembles due process, that is just misplaced magnanimity on our part. That's a stupid thing we chose to do. We don't have to do it. We shouldn't do it. But what the side wants to do that this Mr. Moran is representing, they want to make it impossible for any of Joe Biden's illegal aliens to be removed from the country. Because if they are able to be removed from the country in large numbers, then the whole open borders project of the last 50 or 60 years lies in ruins, and they absolutely can't allow that, and they will die on that hill.
Exactly.
trial, a major trial for every person that came in illegally. We have thousands of murderers that came in. They're going to murder people. They already have murdered people in our country.
Right, so
we have to get them out.
They're
And we have
bad
to get them
guys,
out fast.
really bad guys. But in our country, even bad guys get due process, right?
If people come into our country illegally, there's a different standard. These are illegal. They came in illegally.
Process.
Well, they get a process where we have to get them out. Yeah.
I'm totally going to do a Smarmalade commercial.
Yeah, the process, here's what the process looks like. You can walk out on your own 2 feet, or you can be hog-tied, bagged, and tagged, and forcibly removed. So take your pick.
And there's a few tasers involved in that decision.
Yes. If you want tasers, you can get tasers.
That's perfectly available. We got them on bulk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the Venezuelans.
They get whatever my lawyers say.
Right. All right, let's talk about
Oh, I love me some Trump.
Oh, yeah, baby. I got to hear that again. It's just so much of it.
Right. All right, let's talk about the Venezuelans. You deported more than 200 Venezuelans to that prison in El Salvador. You say they're violent, they're gang members, they're terrorists. Many of them don't have a criminal record at all.
Well,
but
I'm not so sure about that. If you take a look,
I want to read you something.
Excuse me. When you look at those people, they were violent people. They were violent people.
But many of them don't have criminal record.
Go
at this
ahead.
point. I want to read you something.
If you ingressed our country in contravention of our laws, then by definition, you do have a criminal record.
The very second they realize you're here and document that you're here, that is your first criminal document.
Exactly.
And I mean, I don't write the rules. That's just the way they are.
Joe Rogan said this. Joe Rogan, one of the leading podcasters, Trump supporter, about the deportation of Venezuelans. He said, quote, rounding up gang members and shipping them to El Salvador with no due process, he said it was dangerous, and added, quote, we got to be careful that we don't become monsters while we're fighting monsters. Joe
Rogan? You pulled out a Joe Rogan quote? So Mr. Network News anchor is falling back on Joe Rogan to establish his credibility. I mean, just stand and behold that for a moment.
Right.
Joe Rogan. He's one of the leading podcasters. I cannot believe this man is for real and not a parody.
Look at the hate on that man's face. Just the unmitigated disdain and complete lack of anything resembling pride.
Pure Smarmalade.
Pure, unadulterated Smarmalade. Yes, sir.
Deportation of Venezuelans. He said, quote, rounding up gang members and shipping them to El Salvador with no due process, he said, is dangerous, and added, quote, we got to be careful that we don't become monsters while we're fighting monsters. Is Joe Rogan right?
Oh, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, we want to be careful, and we are careful. We're doing something that has to be done. We have a country that's very sick. Joe Biden, and it's not him because I don't even think he knew what the hell was happening, but the people around him are vicious people, and what they've done to the country is unbelievable. They've allowed 21 million people to pour into our country. Many of these people are criminals. They've allowed you mentioned Venezuela, the jails of Venezuela to be emptied into the United States. Do you know Venezuela crime is way down? Way, way down. You know why? Because their criminals are now living happily in the United States of America, and we're getting them out. And I was elected to get them out, and we're getting them out.
Under the law.
And we're getting them out fast, and we're getting them out legally. Now, in some cases, we have judges. In some cases, they're radical left judges. What happened the other day where a judge was protecting a criminal was horrible. And I think she's got big problems, frankly. And there are a couple of them like that.
I want to talk about one
Wait a
man.
minute.
Yep.
We have to be treated fairly by judges, and we're not being treated fairly by all judges.
Oh, that's a subject. So you're saying that you don't like some of the rulings, some of the court.
Have you noticed the difference in the look of Trump since this started? When it started, he was jovial and magnanimous, and now he's returning exactly the same level of vitriolic look that he's receiving.
Yep, and it still escalates more from here.
Oh, it's beautiful.
All judges.
Oh, that's a subject. So you're saying that you don't like some of the rulings, some of the court orders.
I think the rulings will be overturned, yeah.
I only asked about one man and one court order. Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He's the Salvadoran man who crossed into this country illegally, but who is under a protective order that he not be sent back to El Salvador. Your government sent him back to El Salvador and acknowledged in court that was a mistake. And now the Supreme Court has upheld an order that you must return him to facilitate his return to the United States. What are you doing to comply?
Well, the lawyer that said it was a mistake was here a long time, was not appointed by us. should not have said that, should not have said that. And just so
Said
you
it in court.
understand,
Said it
the
in
person
court.
that you're talking about, you're making this person sound, this is a MS-13 gang member, a tough cookie, been in lots of skirmishes, beat the hell out of his wife, and the wife was petrified to even talk about him, okay? This is not an innocent, wonderful gentleman from
I'm
Maryland.
not saying he's a good guy. It's about the rule of law. The order from the Supreme Court
He
stands,
came
sir.
into our country illegally.
You could get him back. There's a phone on this desk.
I could.
You could pick it up, and with all the power of the presidency, you could call up the president of El Salvador and say, send him back right now.
And if he were the gentleman that you say he is, I would do that.
But the court has
he's
ordered
not.
you to facilitate that.
I'm not the one making this decision. We have lawyers that don't
president.
want to do this.
The buck stops in this
No,
office.
no. I follow the law. You want me to follow the law? If I were the president that just wanted to do anything, I'd probably keep him right where he
Supreme
is.
Court says what the law is.
Listen, I was elected to take care of a problem. It was a unforced error that was made by a very incompetent man. And a man that turned out to be incompetent, that you always said was wonderful, a great genius, right? And now you find out, all of the media now, they're saying, what a mistake they made. A man who was grossly incompetent allowed us to have open borders where millions of people flowed in. I campaigned on that issue. I wouldn't say it was my number one issue, but it was pretty close.
Right up there.
I campaigned on that issue. I've done an amazing job. I have closed borders. He said you couldn't do it. You wouldn't be able to do it. It would never happen. Well, it
I got to give him credit on that one. Like from day 1 to day 10, it went from several thousand encounters crossing the border to like 17 or something.
Yes, and let's just briefly run through the Kilmar thing one more time, because the position of the fake news performance artist and the position of all fake news performance artists, the starting point of their argument is that he had an order that said he can't be deported to El Salvador even though he's a Salvadoran, and also we are denying that he is an MS-13 member, and making that argument requires an astounding degree of willful ignorance or straight up stupidity. Because here's the reality. The reason he had a protective order saying he can't be deported to El Salvador is because he went and told a judge and said, because I am a member of MS-13, I fear reprisals from the rival gang if I go back to El Salvador, so you can't deport me back to El Salvador. So if you are going to hang your hat on the argument that he shouldn't have been deported to El Salvador, you cannot also deny that he's a member of MS-13, because the one thing is consequent from the other. You can't do that, guys. That's not the way any of this works.
Yeah.
He's self-identified as an MS-13 member. And he hasn't even started. Wait till we get to the part where he insists that the knuckle tats are photoshopped. We're just about up to that point now.
Right.
It happened. And it happened very quickly. Wait a minute. When we have criminals, murderers, criminals in this country, we have to get them out, and we're doing it.
By law.
And you'll pick out one man, but even the man that you picked out, he said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute.
Well, wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
Yeah, I don't want to
we
talk
can't
about
talk
this
about
anymore.
that.
Let's move on. Let's talk about something different.
Anything else?
Terry.
He did not have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
Yeah, that was Photoshop. So let me.
Of a lifetime. You're doing the interview. I picked you because
He finds himself in such a completely desperate, untenable position that he actually has to blurt out, "Oh, that's Photoshopped." A professional network news anchor just did that, and behold.
Oh, there it is.
because frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. But I picked you, Terry, but you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
Photoshop. Well,
Here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine.
No,
sir.
Terry.
I want to get
I'm not an expert.
He had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El
He's right.
Salvador.
Exactly.
They weren't
look at the
there, but they're
photograph.
there now, right?
No,
But they're
they're in
now.
your picture.
Terry,
Ukraine, sir.
he's got MS-13 on his knuckles.
All right.
Okay?
Well, we'll take a look.
It's you do
We'll take
such
a
a
look.
disservice.
We'll take a look at
Why
that,
don't you
sir.
just say it? Yes, he does.
He goes within 10 seconds. He goes from it's Photoshop to, well, I don't know. I'm not an expert. What an absolute blithering buffoon.
Exactly. Oh my Lord, this is all just. I mean,
Isn't this delicious?
I kind of want some popcorn, bro. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. I
I
want
mean,
some
as much as I am baffled by his desire to still do interviews with the mainstream fake news media, you cannot deny that he gets lots of good material out of it, just with the way they clown themselves constantly.
facts. I'm trying to copy a link. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
I got things happening.
Coming up, the Russia-Ukraine war.
Don't forget, he wants peace. You think Vladimir Putin wants peace?
I need a new mouse. It's getting difficult to get on the right spots.
Just in Rome and Basilica talking peace. It went around the world.
Sure.
Take us into that moment.
Well, look, Ukraine is a very serious, very tough situation. And this is Biden's war. This is not my war, but I want to see if I can solve it because probably close to 5,000 young soldiers a week are being killed, Russian and Ukrainian. We also spend a tremendous amount of money in Ukraine, and Europe should be spending much more than us. They're not. They're spending much less. It's been badly handled by the Biden administration. It's been badly handled all the way around, all the way around.
That moment.
The moment was a moment of solace in a sense because tremendous numbers of people are dying. A lot of his people are dying. They're being killed. And I feel very badly about it. I feel very badly about it. That's a war that would have never happened if I were president. And it didn't happen for 4 years. It was never even a thought of it happening.
It does feel like something's happening after that meeting with Zelensky in St. Peters. You posted this on social media. There was no reason for
Petersburg, you fool.
missiles in civilian areas and cities and towns over the last few days. It makes me think that maybe.
Well, that was part of my post, but you're right. That was a part of a post.
And it says, it makes me think that maybe he doesn't want to stop the war. He's just tapping me along.
Yeah, that's possible. Sure.
He might be.
He could be tapping me along a little bit. I would say that he would like to stop the war. I think that if it weren't for me, I think he'd want to take over the whole country personally. I always felt. So when I left, there wasn't even a chance that this would happen. When Biden got involved, I won't say whether or not he handled it properly, but obviously it wasn't good because the war started. Putin went in, the war started. I believe that Putin wanted to get all of Ukraine once he went in. And I think part of the reason he went in, he saw what happened in Afghanistan, how incompetently Milley and all these guys handled that. It was one of the greatest embarrassments of our lifetimes, but maybe in the history of our country. Okay, so Putin went in. I think Putin wanted all of Ukraine. Right. I think if I didn't win the election, he would have gotten all of Ukraine. I think he would have taken all of Ukraine. I think his first choice, never with me, he would have never gone in. With this group of losers, he went in, he saw what happened in Afghanistan. He said, wow, this is my chance. Because it was always the apple of his eye. I talked to him. Ukraine was the apple of his eye. I think he wanted the whole country.
You said for months.
Because of me, I do believe that he's willing to stop the fighting. Don't forget,
you think he wants
this
peace?
is a,
You think Vladimir Putin wants peace?
I think he does, yes. I think
Still.
he does. I think
Even with the raining missiles
I think he really, his dream was to take over the whole country. I think because of me, he's not going to do that.
Do you trust him? Do you trust him?
I don't trust you. I don't trust a lot of people. I don't trust you. Look at you. You come all shooting from there. You're so happy to do the interview. Then you start hitting me with fake questions. You start telling me that a guy doesn't have the tattoo. You know,
I want to inject this directly into my veins.
I don't trust a lot of people.
Right.
But I do think this. I think that
Let's get a good one.
He respects me. And I believe because of me, he's not going to take over the whole. But his decision, his choice would be to take over all of Ukraine. Okay. It's a war that never should have happened. It did happen because of incompetent people.
Last question on this.
But it never should have happened.
If there's no peace deal, will the U.S. cut off military aid?
I don't want to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you whether or not I would or not. I want to leave that as a big fat secret because I don't want to ruin a negotiation. But
I'd be worried.
I will tell you, I was not happy with what I saw Putin.
Let me translate what Trump just said, and you tell me if you he just told that man to go fuck right off up a rope.
Yep, go piss up a rope, motherfucker.
Get right in, bro. It's on you.
Yeah, like I would tell you that.
Towns
I wouldn't have even asked. I mean, let's be honest.
and cities.
Yeah, you're just going to make yourself look like a fool, which he's good at, admittedly.
Yeah.
Again, It's a war that shouldn't have happened. This is a war that if the election weren't rigged, and it was totally rigged, the 2020 election, if it weren't rigged,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have that. You wouldn't have had the embarrassment of Afghanistan. You wouldn't have October 7th of Israel. You wouldn't have any of the problems that you have right now.
I want to ask one
And you
question.
wouldn't have had inflation either.
All right, I want to ask one question about Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. There's a lot of turmoil at the Pentagon right now. There's the signal chat with his wife on it where he's discussing that.
There's not turmoil at the Pentagon. You guys just want to get rid of Hegseth because you want to take a scalp.
You had a talk with the secretary.
You guys desperately want to take a scalp, and Hegseth is the guy you've chosen, and you're going to do absolutely anything you can do to take that scalp. Just like we've talked about this before. What happened at the start of Trump's first term? He let him take a scalp. He let him get Mike Flynn, and that backfooted the whole administration, and that enabled a whole bunch of other abuses by the FBI and others, and it wound up being a gigantic impediment to his whole administration that he let them take that first scalp when he was still making the mistake of thinking that they were operating in good faith. And he's not going to let that happen again. So good luck with that, assholes.
Right. So the last 10 minutes, I want to ask the chat whether or not they think the individual speaking in front of them is inebriated. All right. I know we had Kevin to truncate the Trump thing, and we'll get back to it next week. If you
that's fine. We need to get to this.
I think this would be hilarious to end it on. I think it'll roll well. You ready?
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Steve. Oh, it's wonderful to be home. And thank you all. Thank you. Oh, in 20 years, Andrea. My goodness. I mean, your babies are grown. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for supporting Emerge. It is so wonderful to be home and to be back with all the leaders who are here and to celebrate this extraordinary organization, which is an organization of so many exceptional leaders, those who found the courage to run for office and those who support them. Emerge, I will say something you know. Throughout my entire career and life, I have always believed in the ideals of our nation. The ideals reflected in the Declaration of Independence, that all are created equal and endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Ideals advanced and affirmed by the service and sacrifice of generations of patriots. The ideals that ground the Constitution of the United States, that here in our country, power ultimately lies not with the wealthy or well-connected, but with all of us, with we the people. Now, of course, I recognize that America has never fully lived up to these ideals, that for all the gains we've made, the American dream has for decades been slipping further out of reach for so many, and that the American people deserve leaders who make their lives better and make our country stronger.
Thank God we have one now.
Sadly, we have seen quite the opposite over these past few months. Now, I know tonight's event happens to coincide with the 100 days after the inauguration, and I'll leave it to others to give a full accounting of what has happened so far. But I will say this. Instead of an administration working to advance America's highest ideals, we are witnessing.
Hold up. Is she going into talking down to people mama mode?
Yeah, and she starts getting into angry Kamala mode here. I mean, we're seeing the start of it right now, but where she starts really enunciating every single letter and every word.
This is going to be great.
The wholesale abandonment of those ideals. And what we are also seeing in these last 14 weeks is Americans using their voice and showing their courage. We all know President Trump and his administration and their allies are counting on the notion that fear can be contagious. They are counting on the notion that if they make some people afraid, it will have a chilling effect on others. But what they're overlooking, what they have overlooked, is that fear is not the only thing that's contagious. Courage is contagious. The courage of Americans who are banding together in the face of the greatest man-made economic crisis in modern presidential history. Americans across the political spectrum who are declaring that the president's reckless tariffs hurt workers and families by raising the cost of everyday essentials, devastate the retirement accounts that people spent a lifetime on, and paralyze American businesses, large and small, forcing them to lay off people, to stop hiring or pause investment decisions. The courage of Americans we are seeing who are rallying at Social Security offices to protect their hard-earned benefits. Of Americans who are speaking out to say, it is not okay to violate court orders. Not okay. Saying it is not okay to detain and disappear American citizens or anyone without due process. The courage.
Yay.
She is so smashed.
Full rule of law in the face of those who would jail them. Of universities that are defying unconstitutional demands that threaten the pursuit of truth and academic independence.
That crazy grandma hand's going now.
Yeah. These are not the droids you're looking for.
The courage of all these Americans inspires me. And I have been inspired by the movements like the one in Wisconsin that put Susan Crawford on the Supreme Court. By the State of the People Power Tour that is aiming to ignite a grassroots movement to lift up voices and advance freedom and justice. And by leaders across the spectrum, including congressional leaders like Cory Booker, Chris Van Hollen, Chris Murphy, Jasmine Crockett, Maxwell Cross, AOC, and Bernie Sanders.
Well, there's a motley crew of socialists and communists.
God, I know of all the people to name drop, you pick all the honest to God socialists and communists.
But and real.
And do you notice how she's veering wildly back and forth between angry, confrontational, finger-wagging Kamala and smirky, happy, friendly Kamala? It's like boom, 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 just there's no middle ground. It's just one or the other. And I'm telling you right now, she's absolutely smashed.
Gotta be. Allegedly.
All who, in different ways,
allegedly,
have been speaking with moral clarity about this moment. So here's one of the other things I wanted to talk about tonight and to highlight. So look, some people are...
She got some major jazz hands going on, baby.
Seriously.
And of course, I understand why. And it's certainly true of those tariffs. Tariffs that, as I predicted, are clearly inviting a recession. But friends, please let us not be duped into thinking everything is chaos.
She casting spells?
I feel that way. But understand.
She's got that bent finger thing she does. Like she doesn't want to point, so she bends it. It's so off-putting.
Is being used for the swift implementation of an agenda that has been decades in the making.
And here she is back to angry Kamala.
To slash public education. An agenda to shrink government and then privatize its services. All while giving tax breaks to the wealthiest among us. By the way, an agenda that is not lowering costs, not making life more affordable, and not what they promised. It's an agenda, a narrow, self-serving vision of America, where they punish truth tellers, favor loyalists, cash in on their power, and leave everyone to fend for themselves, all while abandoning allies and retreating from the world. And folks, what we are experiencing right now is exactly what they envisioned for America. Right now, we are living in their vision for America.
All right, I think that's an excellent place to stop because she said exactly the thing that was true. Congratulations, you're living in Trump's vision of America. Welcome to the
I
golden.
know. And she says that like it's a bad thing.
I know. Like, we just sold the entire Trump presidency right there. Bam. Dollar bills, bro.
And as we know, your words mean so much more and have so much more gravity when you pause between each one of them and accompany them with wild jazz hands, hand gestures. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for joining us here on the Blast Radius tonight, maybe Blast Radio next week. Who the hell knows? Stay tuned. We will see you next Sunday. Watch my stuff this week. Watch Squatch's stuff this week. You know where to find all this stuff, and we'll do the stuff. Have a great day. Pleasant tomorrow. Edifying week ahead. We'll see you next time. Have a great evening. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.
Give me the money. Give me the money.